Berlin, December 11, 1941. The deafening echo of Adolf Hitler's speech to the Reichstag. Hours after declaring war on the United States, the mood in the Nazi leadership was not fear, but confidence. A surprising, almost arrogant confidence. For years, Hitler had dismissed America as a degenerate nation, a mongrel society incapable of sustained military effort. But was this purely ideological blindness, or did the Third Reich possess concrete strategic calculations that made this decision seem, to them, not just plausible but winnable? This certainty stemmed from an analysis of weaknesses that many in the German high command believed were fundamental to the American character and its war-making potential. The fundamental German assumption, rooted in a mixture of pre-war analysis and ideological bias, painted the United States as a strategic giant with feet of clay. Germany's intelligence, often limited and colored by their own racial theories, viewed America's diverse population as a source of terminal instability, lacking the cohesive Volksgemeinschaft, racial community, they believed was critical for national resolve and wartime sacrifice. What many German leaders failed to understand, or deliberately ignored, was the unifying power of democratic principles when mobilized for total war. This perceived social fragility was just one component of a broader, more tangible calculation concerning America's actual ability to mobilize for a global conflict. At this stage of the war, the geography itself seemed a potent German ally. The Atlantic Ocean was not just a body of water, it was a vast defensive barrier, particularly relevant when America's projected military involvement would require projecting massive forces across its length. From the German perspective, even if the United States could produce the weapons of war, deploying them effectively seemed a logistical nightmare. Germany's naval and air dominance, specifically its U-boat force, was poised to make that crossing untenable. German planners didn't just rely on geography, they had a precise tactical weapon system in the U-boats, designed specifically to strangle this logistical link before it could fully materialize. During the first happy time in 1940 and again immediately following the U.S. entry into the war, German U-boats, like the Type VIB and VIC, operated with devastating efficiency, particularly off the American East Coast during Operation Drumbeat. These 769-ton vessels, armed with a 88mm deck gun and 14 torpedoes, utilized their low profile and high surface speed, 17.7 knots, to overwhelm underdefended Allied shipping. German naval leadership calculated that sinking tonnage faster than the Allies could replace it, a target set at 700,000 to 800,000 tons per month, would eventually cripple Britain and prevent an effective American buildup. However, the sheer speed and scale of American industrial mobilization were variables that German calculations, even those based on tonnage, disastrously underestimated. While Germany recognized American industrial capacity in general terms, they critically underestimated the speed and absolute magnitude of its conversion to wartime production. For many in the Nazi leadership, American mass production, symbolized by the Fordist assembly line, was associated with consumer goods, not complex military hardware. What is often overlooked is that the US didn't just produce weapons, they re-engineered production processes for weapons at a rate that bewildered German economic planners. This industrial surge wasn't just about making more, it was about making advanced technologies faster and in quantities that negated any specific German tactical advantages. The definitive answer to Germany's tonnage war came not only from improved anti-submarine warfare, ASW, but from the American response in shipbuilding. German calculations had assumed a relatively fixed shipbuilding capacity for the Allies. They did not account for the Liberty ship. Using prefabricated modules, standardized designs, based on a simpler, older British design, and a massive workforce that included many women for the first time, American shipyards shattered all records. From a pre-war average of 244 days per ship, yards like Henry Kaiser's were launching Liberty ships in under 30 days, sometimes even faster. Germany's entire naval strategy was built around the assumption that Allied shipbuilding was a constant, but American industry made it a variable, and a rapidly increasing one. Beyond logistics, Germany also suffered from technological overconfidence. The Third Reich was, in several fields, at the cutting edge. They had developed the first operational jet fighter, the Messerschmitt Me 262, and advanced rocket technology like the V-2. This technical edge, particularly in propulsion, fueled an arrogant belief that German engineering was inherently superior. Why did they believe this specific technological lead would ensure victory? They rationalized that these high-tech systems would deliver decisive tactical advantages that could compensate for their smaller overall industrial output. But this technical superiority was often localized and arrived too late to effect a strategic change, crippled by resource scarcity that German planners constantly struggled to overcome. Every advanced German machine, from the Tiger tank to the Me-262 jet, required one critical, increasingly scarce resource: oil. For the United States, resource constraints were primarily logistical, but for Germany, they were existential. Their entire war machine ran on synthetic fuel and dwindling supplies from occupied territories like Romania's Ploiești oil fields. German strategic calculations depended on quick victories that avoided a prolonged war of attrition, a format they knew they couldn't sustain against a resource-rich opponent. Germany's initial strategy, Blitzkrieg, was specifically engineered to avoid this attrition, but they didn't anticipate that America would be able to sustain the war long enough to make that attrition inevitable. German intelligence, particularly regarding the US and its Pacific focus, was often fragmented and sometimes deliberately manipulated. When Germany declared war on the US, they did so partially under the assumption that American might would be exclusively absorbed in the Pacific, fighting Japan. Furthermore, significant American projects, like the development of the B-29 superfortress, were largely underestimated or completely unknown to German strategic planners. They could not conceive of a bomber with such range and payload being developed so rapidly. This failure to accurately assess the strategic flexibility of American power, its ability to fight effectively in two theaters simultaneously, would prove to be a fatal blind spot. While German engineers focused on short-range interceptors, the United States was perfecting the Boeing B-29 Superfortress, a pressurized high-altitude heavy bomber that represented a quantum leap in aerospace engineering. Costing $3 billion, more than the Manhattan Project itself, the B-29 featured remote-controlled gun turrets and a ceiling of 31,850 feet. German intelligence largely dismissed the possibility of such a machine being deployed in the European theater. They calculated that no bomber could carry a 20,000-pound bomb load across such distances while maintaining speeds of 350 miles per hour. This technical blindness meant that Germany's Fortress Europe was architecturally unprepared for a threat that could literally fly above their reach. But it wasn't just the physical reach of American bombers that caught Berlin off guard. It was the invisible signals that began to dismantle their defensive net. A critical factor in this development was the cavity magnetron, a British invention mass-produced by American industry. This small vacuum tube allowed for microwave frequency radar, small enough to fit into the nose of an aircraft. German scientists, while skilled, had focused on longer-wave radar, which was bulky and easily jammed. The American adoption of the SCR-584 radar and the H-2X ground scanning system allowed Allied bombers to see through solid cloud cover and smoke screens with terrifying precision. Germany's strategic assumption was that weather and darkness would provide a tactical sanctuary for their industry and U-boats. They didn't realize that the US had effectively turned the electromagnetic spectrum into a one-way mirror. By the time the German High Command realized the invincible Atlantic Wall had been bypassed by technology and logistics, the gears of the American war machine were already grinding toward the Rhine. Ultimately, Germany's belief that it could defeat the United States was a complex architecture built on ideological overconfidence, flawed intelligence, and an underestimation of democratic resilience and industrial agility. It was a strategy based on narrow calculations: if we sink X tons per month, or if our jets are Y mph faster. But it failed to account for the dynamic, interconnected system of American power, a system capable of adapting, outproducing, and projecting that power across oceans faster than German theories deemed possible. In the final inning, German strategic hubris proved to be its undoing. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel for more content about the United States in World War II. Thank you for watching.